This film documents the life of sea ice and the scientific work conducted to study the plants and animals found in this unusual habitat. The work shown here takes place in the far north of Alaska, well above the Arctic Circle, near Barrow, Alaska. Barrow, the northernmost city in the United States, on the shores of the Chukchi Sea. The Chukchi Sea is frozen from October to late June. It looks pretty desolate. However, there is a lot of life here if you look inside and under the ice. The first step in studying sea ice biology is to drive out on the ice with a snow machine. You select a nice study site, but before you can get to work, there are two main dangers you have to worry about. First of all, it's really cold. But if you dress properly, you can work outside quite happily. After all, native communities have lived near Barrow for thousands of years. The other worry is Nanook, or polar bears. These are the tracks of a polar bear who walked through a study site. Polar bears are potentially very dangerous, so one should always have a local guide. The local people are very experienced with polar bears and know how to keep visitors, like scientists, safe. So to study things living inside sea ice, you need to sample it. This is essentially a big hollow drill bit with which one drills into the ice to remove a tube or core of ice. An ice core looks like this. The top of the ice is on the right, the bottom is to the left. Notice the dark coloration near the bottom of the ice, where the ice and water meet. One often sees that pigmented section on the bottom 5 to 10 centimeters of sea ice cores. The pigmented band is actually a contiguous layer all along the bottom of the ice. It's colored because of the organisms that live inside the ice, in the pore spaces. This image shows microscopic algal cells inside a thin slice of sea ice. These are tiny plants that live and grow inside of the sea ice. Here's a close-up image of a single algal cell collected from sea ice viewed with a microscope. In reality, the length of each cell is only about 1/10 the width of a human hair. Now, wherever you have plants growing, even microscopic plants, you have animals that eat them. This is true for sea ice as well. This video shows a peach-colored flatworm and some fast-moving worm larvae that were collected by melting a small piece of sea ice. In their natural habitat, these little animals swim around inside the internal passageways of sea ice, searching for and eating the algae. To give you an idea of the relative size of predator and prey, some of the bright dots in the image background are algal cells, like the ones seen in previous slides. In reality, the worms themselves are only about a ½ millimeter in length. And of course, wherever you have small animals feeding on plants, you also have bigger animals that want to eat the small animals. Sea ice is no different. Larger animals can't get inside the internal channels and pore spaces of the ice, but if you put a camera down through a hole in the ice, you can find them on the ice undersurface. Here the camera is looking at the ice-water interface, and now we're looking up at the bottom surface of the ice. Notice that the ice is pigmented from the algae, and that there's also many black spots on the ice. If you look closely at some of these black spots, you'll notice that they're moving. These are amphipods, sort of like small shrimp, and they crawl around on the ice undersurface, scraping off the algae and the small animals and eating them. And of course, there are even bigger animals that eat these amphipods. These are mostly animals that you're more familiar with, like this fish, an Arctic cod. So there is a whole community of organisms intimately associated with and dependent on sea ice. This includes the algae in the ice and the things that eat them directly, as well as a chain of connections eventually linking up to the fish, birds, seals, and polar bears that most people are more familiar with. However, those big animals owe their existence ultimately to the small organisms at the base of the food chain, including the microscopic plants and animals of sea ice.